CM Punk has been in the news lately. A lot has been going on with him. In particular, he is in the middle of a trial with a WWE doctor, Dr. Rahman, who's suing CM Punk over comments he made about his health during the podcast with Colt Cabana in 2014. I remember listening to that podcast when it first came out. It took me about 2 days for it because it crashed all the podcasts. You couldn't get to it because some people were trying to download it. It was such a big hit. It was I think it actually dropped on Thanksgiving in November. And in that podcast, Punk completely trashes Dr. Rahman. He keeps talking about this lump on his back, and it was actually, I think the mistake Punk might have made was, I think it was on his below his waist, like near his butt. So I think that's a mistake he made, but that's a big story right now. And also with CM Punk, he has a fight. He is fighting Mike the Truth Jackson at UFC 225 on Saturday, June 9th. So like in about 6 days. And another thing with Punk is this is the anniversary, close to the anniversary of his Pipebomb. His Pipebomb was on June 27th, 2011. It's June 3rd right now, and I wanted to do this I wanted to pay tribute to the Pipebomb because I thought that was such a great moment in Raw WWE history. And another thing with Punk, Money in the Bank is in Chicago, and that's the first time Money in the Bank has been in Chicago since 2011, and which was one of the greatest pay-per-views in WWE history. So let's remember the Pipebomb. June 27th, 2011, it was this Raw they were hyping it up, was in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the Thomas and Mack Center, and they were doing Raw Roulette, and a lot happened on the show on Raw. Another thing that's notable is right after they did this show, they taped another 2-hour Raw, and that show was more hype for Money in the Bank, and CM Punk, they announced he was suspended after this promo. So I wanted to go back and revisit promo and where I was when this promo was happening. I remember watching Raw, and I remember not being interested in anything. I remember not being interested in the CM Punk storyline because I figured CM Punk's going to leave. I thought the storyline was boring, and Punk was very cold at that time. He gained a whole bunch of momentum after the Pipebomb, and I think this took him to a whole new level, but he was still in that, the new Nexus or whatever. It was horrible. That new Nexus absolutely sucked. Everyone sucked. Didn't fit well. And everyone on Punk and Cena was not looking forward to that match at all. I figured Del Rio was going to win Money in the Bank and cash, and that was the original plan, and I was just not into that match. But it all changed. John Cena was in the main event with R-Truth in a tables match, and CM Punk came out during the match, and R-Truth got a shock victory over John Cena in the tables match. That was when R-Truth was doing the whole Lil Jimmy thing. I heard that horrible story, which I thought was hilarious. It made me laugh, called Lil Jimmy. But R-Truth beats John Cena in the tables match, and then John Cena's out cold on the table, and he is beat up, and CM Punk drops the pipe bomb. I never really noticed why CM Punk was wearing a Steve Austin shirt when he was doing a promo, but he starts it off and he says, "John Cena, while you lay there hopefully as uncomfortable as you possibly can be, I want you to listen to me. I want you to digest this because before I leave in 3 weeks with your WWE Championship, I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest." So I wasn't really thinking much. I wasn't paying much attention to this when I was watching it in 2011. I turned up the volume because I was like just on my laptop surfing, not even paying attention to Raw. But for whatever reason, I raised up the volume to see what was going on. After that, he says, "I don't even dislike you. I hate you. I do like you. I like you a hell of a lot more than the guys in the back." And I thought, all right, that's kind of interesting. He says, "I hate this idea that you're the best. I'm the best." And I was thinking to myself, all right, this is just a regular WWE promo at this point. Because it was interesting to see the way he was sitting. It was like, he's going to say something crazy. He's mad. He says, "I hate the idea that you're the best because you're not. I'm the best. I'm the best in the world." And the fans at this point are chanting, "What?" They're not too into it. It doesn't seem like it was anything different. And it all changes when he says, "There's one thing better than you are than I am." And he says, "That's kissing Vince McMahon's ass." And I remember thinking, uh-oh, what's going on? Did he just say that? He says, "You're a bigger ass cooker than Hulk Hogan was." as big of an ass kisser, and Hogan was in TNA at the time, so never heard anyone mention Hulk Hogan. That was crazy. Like, oh shit, you mentioned Hogan, that's a big no-no. He says Dwayne's an ass kicker, which is The Rock, and he's going after The Rock pretty hard here, saying he's still an ass kisser. And The Rock got pissed off because he tweeted at CM Punk after this. Punk says, "Oops, am I breaking the fourth wall?" It's like it's kind of, breaking kayfabe, but still in the realm because he's still talking about the WWE Championship. He then says, "I'm the best wrestler in the world," and the fans go, "Oh," because everyone knows at that time that Vince McMahon was on this thing where he couldn't mention wrestling. It was like 2010, 2011. You were not allowed to mention wrestling. He hated the word wrestling. He's like, he wanted to remove all wrestling. It's just sports entertainment. And when Punk said wrestler, it was like, oh shit, Vince is gonna lose his mind. You can't say any wrestling. He was on this like anti-wrestling purge at this time. He talked about how since day one he was the best when he walked into the company, but then he was vilified since he came in because he was a Paul Heyman guy, and that was huge. And that also sparked a big T-shirt because the whole Paul Heyman guy. But at that time, no one mentioned Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman left in 2006 after that infamous, disastrous ECW, horrible, disastrous, garbage pay-per-view, December to Dismember, that piece of trash. And no one mentioned Paul Heyman. So he mentioned Paul Heyman, was like, holy fuck, you never hear Paul Heyman. It's like he was on horrible terms with the company. Like, you don't mention him. And then I remember even thinking, holy fuck, what the fuck's going on? After that, he says, who else was a Paul Heyman guy? Brock Lesnar. And Brock Lesnar was on terrible terms with the company. He was in the UFC, when Brock Lesnar won the UFC title. WWE didn't mention him. They hated him. They Chris Benoit had Brock Lesnar from their website for a while. Chris Benoit, they completely erased him after we know what he did. But with Brock Lesnar, it's like, they gave him that same treatment. They completely erased him from history. It was crazy. Like when he left in 2004, from those 8 years until he returned, they erased him from history. And when Punk mentioned Brock Lesnar, the year before that, Punk was on this award Slammy show, and he was talking about time when Brock Lesnar and Big Show suplexed through the ring, and then he was saying, I don't know who the other guy is. He was making fun of Big Show, and people remember, wait, Brock. So Punk has mentioned Brock 2 times in a row, and no one ever was allowed to mention Brock. He buried him the first time. He talks about Brock split in 2004, and Vince hated him for that. And they got into a lawsuit soon after that. He talked about how he's going to leave with the WWE Championship, and again, that's kind of going back to kayfabe while breaking it at the same time, steering on that, that line. He's passed on, he's shooting, but he's also keeping it into the storyline, which is kind of cool. He talks about Vince McMahon's brass rings, how they're imaginary. I remember thinking to myself, I remember that, and I remember 3 years later, Vince McMahon's on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast. He's talking about the brass rings. It's like, oh my god, this takes you right back to that. It's you can see why so many are frustrated with the WWE. Oh my god, those fucking brass rings. He's just ripping into him, and it's fuck. When you hear Vince talk, all the stuff CM Punk was talking about is true. He's saying how he's the best in the ring, on the mic, and on commentary, and good. He buried the commentary because at that time, and it still is, the commentary was absolutely abysmal. Now he's going off on the companies. He's talking about how he's not promoted. He's not on the WrestleMania poster, not on any of the sippy cups, and he even buries USA, which shocked me. I think that pissed USA off. I'm not on some crappy show on the USA Network. That was good because USA always promoted those shitty shows after all, and they all failed miserably. He says, he's not on any of the late night shows like Conan O'Brien or Jimmy Fallon. And then he talks about how Dwayne's in the main event of WrestleMania and it makes him sick. And The Rock, he, same night, I remember him tweeting, well, the only reason I'm in the main event is because I can draw more than one night than you can draw in a lifetime. So I think that pissed The Rock off pretty bad. Now he's burying the fans. He talks about how the fans, make him sign stuff at the airport and how they're too lazy to get a real job. And he's getting heat. He is ripping into everybody, ripping into the whole fucking company right now, just destroying all of management, ripping. And then, it gets crazier because then he talks about Vince and ripping into Vince. And he also talks about how when he wins the title, he's going to go back to New Japan Pro Wrestling, and that was crazy. He mentioned them, and then he mentions Ring of Honor, and he goes into the camera and waves, "Hi, Colt Cabana, how you doing?" That was crazy. Everyone, that was holy fuck, he mentioned Colt Cabana. because Colt Cabana was fired. He was like Scotty Goldman or something. He was just horrible. He was goofy, and he was fired not too long before that. And he goes after the fans and says, you're as big of a reason and as him leaving. He's going after them, how they're going to still pour money into this company, and how he's never spoke on this wheel. And then he talks about Vince is a millionaire who should be a billionaire. And that was big because Vince is always, promoted as a billionaire. And that's must have really hurt Vince's ego. And Punk said that. And he says, well, you know why he's not a billionaire? It's because he has yes men like John Laurinaitis, and that was crazy because no one mentioned John Laurinaitis. Think about all the stuff that happened after this promo. I mean, it changed wrestling. This changed the WWE because John Laurinaitis became an on-screen character. Triple H and Stephanie became heels shortly after this. They became characters again on TV. It's like everything changed after this. I think that this promo sparked the Authority, which didn't come for another 2 years with Daniel Bryan, but like it changed. This was a game changer for WWE. Like it changed everything. Like so much that happened. Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman, Laurinaitis, Triple H and Stephanie as heels, Vince as a heel. Like so much changed after this promo. He also called Laurinaitis a douchebag, which I think a lot of the roster is probably happy about. And he talks about how he likes to think when this company will change once Vince McMahon's dead, which was big. And then that was a big one. And he talks about how, it's just going to be taken over by his idiotic daughter, which buried Stephanie. I think Stephanie's always hated CM Punk shortly after that. And his doofus son-in-law burying Triple H, who he's always had heat with. That was definitely crazy. And then, of course, Punk talks about how we do this whole bully campaign. He's telling us a story about Vince. I think Vince freaked out because I think WWE did not want that. They had a lot invested in that bully campaign. They still do that whole be a star thing, even though WWE is some of the biggest bullies you'll ever see. That was definitely very memorable when he said that. That sparked a lot of controversy when he said that, and they cut out his mic and he starts yelling at the camera, "I've been silenced." And the show just goes off the air of Punk yelling at the camera. So that was just a legendary promo. One of the most memorable things in WWE history. That was definitely a great moment. Definitely the aftermath. Money in the Bank happened after that. And, of course, this turned into the Summer of Punk, the 2011 Summer of Punk. Just so crazy. I remember going on Twitter looking for the promo. Everyone was going crazy. I think NoDQ.com, a wrestling site, they crashed after this. They also crashed after Money in the Bank. Everyone was just losing their minds. Message boards were crashing because so many people were trying to log on. It was such a crazy moment. This was a legendary moment. It was absolutely out of control. Everyone was going crazy. One of the best moments in modern day wrestling history without question. So, just remembering that great pipe bomb. It's been 7 years. It's a lot going on. CM Punk has his trial right now. He has a fight soon. It's Money in the Bank is back in Chicago, and I will talk about the 2011 Money in the Bank next week. Just a lot. I just really wanted to go back and remember that. And this was officially the first episode in the new LRMania Retro series, and I hope you enjoy. And if you have any other requests of other things you'd like to hear me talk about in wrestling past, you can leave it in the comments. The next LRMania Retro will be next week when I talk about Money in the Bank 2011.